What's up, everybody? Chicago Gooner here, bringing another Arsenal talk. Yes, another one. I know it's been a long time since I've uploaded. I'm going to explain to you a little bit here of why I stopped uploading. Um, Back early in the summertime, right after basically the FA Cup, I moved. And it took a while. It took about a good month to get internet service, which sucked. Even called Comcast really early on in the process to say, I'm going to need internet service right away. They couldn't provide it. Kind of sucked. Of course, I was already locked into a contract and everything like that. But it's water under the bridge now. But I didn't get internet service for about a good month. Nothing was really going on during the summertime. Um, I ended up getting rid of my old computer, which had a really good editing program on it, Sony Vegas. But I ended up getting rid of it because it was just too old. It was outdated. I needed something new. Um, and in that process, I tried to pick up other, free programs that I could use on my new computer. And most of the programs that I tried to download and that stuff, that it just wasn't good. It wasn't user friendly like a Sony Vegas. It wasn't, you couldn't go on YouTube even and search and say, how do I render, how do I edit, stuff like that. It just wasn't there. And the directions which they provided, like the troubleshooting, just wasn't there. So um, I figured I'd wait till the season started and stuff like that, but it just got so long in the process. And also when I signed back into my channel, I had three messages waiting for me from YouTube saying that three of my videos were deleted, not blocked. They were just completely deleted because of supposed copyright infringements, which is BS, complete BS, because I never used any type of video, never used any type of network showings of the games or anything like that, or highlights. It was just all photographs. So I don't know if someone reported me or whatnot, because any of the photos that I got, you can search on Google, Yahoo, Bing, whatever your search engine is, and you can find those photos right then and there. You can see them on Twitter and everything, and if you have Facebook as well, even Reddit. And it was still blocked. It was still deleted, and it really pissed me off. A couple years prior, I had a gaming channel as well on YouTube, and the same thing happened. Maybe about like 3-4 years ago is when Google took over YouTube, and they really hit hard with all the copyright infringements, and they started blocking a lot of videos of YouTubers, regardless of what you did, like gaming or sports or vlogs, anything like that. If you had anything, music, little tidbits of video, I mean, it would be blocked. And I ended that like a few years ago because it just got to be too much of a headache. And so kind of like the same thing happened. It just pissed me off, and I said, "Fuck this, fuck YouTube. I'm not gonna probably do this anymore because some of my life changed as far as work goes and different hours, and I wasn't able to really watch any type of the midweek games. Um, Pretty much when I was able to stop watching midweek games is probably, I think there's two games left in the um, Champions League group stage, and so I knew it was coming too, and I figured, if I can't talk about those games, what's the point? And a lot of those games, especially the midweek games, we lost, and it just wasn't going to be worth for me to get pissed off and rewatch the game. I would listen to it on Arsenal Player at work and stuff like that, but it just wasn't the same, and I wasn't going to go back and watch a loss and watch how bad the players performed and try to talk about it. And it got to be too much. It got to be to the point to where I just didn't have any time. But now, in the light of everything that's been going on, throughout the season, I got a few messages from people saying, are you going to do it? Are you going to keep on doing this? Are you going to, we really want to hear your views on what's going on with the team. It seems like a free fall, And so, in the light of what's been happening, especially over the last 2 months, it's just been chaotic, as far as being an Arsenal fan and watching this team just, it's like I said, it's a free fall. And, the bottom dropped out. Whatever happened after Christmas, it really is mind-boggling. No, we had some injuries, but injuries are not a good excuse. When we did have somewhat of a good squad depth for this season. Maybe not so much now because after the Hull City game, it's just been, it's just really you really want to crack your head against the fucking wall as hard as possible. Um, but in the light of what's happened, I'm going to start giving you my views of what's going on, just because I've hit, a breaking point. Everybody has them, regardless of what, whether it's personal, whether it's work, or your love for a sports team. Everybody has a breaking point, and I finally reached mine. I kind of started reaching it all the way back in the Man City game of last year, and I'll go over a lot of that in these episodes. I'm going to be doing three of them, almost like back to back to back. The first part is going to be all about Arsene Wenger, the club. Second part is going to be about the players, and then the third part is going to be about the fans. And you know, again, a lot of the stuff's going around, especially since the banner about it's people's opinions, views. This is my opinion, whether you like it or not. Personally, I really don't care. But at the same time, if you just come at me saying that you're a fucking idiot, that does nothing. If you're going to, try to challenge my views or try to convince me otherwise, come with some logic, come with some knowledge, come with some facts instead of just saying you're a fucking idiot. Because it really doesn't do anything. It doesn't really do anything for me. It doesn't change my mind. But again, this is my opinion, whether you like it or not. Um, you know, if you do agree with me, if you don't, that's fine. It's okay. You don't have to agree with everything anybody ever says, in the world. It's fine. It's human nature, and I'm not going to be mad or be pissed off about it because, um, you know, being stressed out and frustrated about Arsenal Football Club is it's beyond my breaking point at this stage. And the funny thing about this is really is um, we shouldn't really be talking like this. We shouldn't be, saying Wenger out or anything like that, or talking bad about him or maybe even the players. I mean, we're back-to-back FA Cup champions, and a lot of people are freaking out this year more than any year that I've seen. Being an Arsenal fan, back in between like 2007 to 2012, we had an excuse that was to pay off the Emirates. I'll get into that. I'll talk about that a little bit as well. But um, but now there is no excuse really. There is no excuse of not winning the league, not being competitive in Champions League, not spending the money. It's all that. It's just it's a it's like when you put a fresh pot of water on your stove and you're just waiting for it to boil over. Well, my pot of water is boiled over. I mean, it's bubbling to the point to where it's just scalding hot. And again, these are my views, these are my opinions, and yeah, let's get into it. So Arsene Wenger, Arsenal Football Club, at least that's what they call themselves. Personally, I've been saying this for the last like couple weeks. Is it's not a club anymore. It's a company. And what do companies do? They want to make money. They want to make profit. That's what companies do. That's how companies think. There's not a company in the world that doesn't want to make a profit, that doesn't want to make a buck. So no longer, you know, back in, prior to Stan Kroenke coming in, prior to the Emirates being built, it was a football club. It was for the fans, by the fans. The fans were the most important thing to a football club because they were going to be there long after even the best player or the best players that they have ever seen come through the club. The fans are always going to be there 10 years, 20 years, 30 years after the fact. This is something that Stan Kroenke, Ivan Gazidis, even Arsene Wenger now does not understand. If you've heard Arsene Wenger's comments over the last week or so about he's bored to death about his future, he doesn't listen to the fans, he doesn't care what the fans say. It's insulting to the fans to say stuff like that. I know it's probably insulting to him to question him, but no one else is questioning him. No one that we know of, none of the Arsenal board, none of the executives at Arsenal are ever questioning him and his motives. And so it leaves it up to the fans to be that voice. And of course, with social media, with YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, we do have a voice. We can express our voice now more than any time ever as a fan. Back even fucking 10 years ago, we couldn't really voice our opinions. You would have to either write an email or go to a game and Hall, just like at the Hall City game, have a banner flying. And that was the only way to talk to the club almost. I know they had their support group meetings and stuff like that, but how many times a year do they do that? Once, twice a year, especially under Kroenke. I think it's only once or twice a year, and that's just not enough. A lot of the groups in Arsenal that are trying to protest, whether it's about ticket prices, whether it's about how the club is being run, where the money is going, why the money is not being spent. A lot of these groups need to come together instead of being separate and form one huge group so that all of these complaints can come to the forefront. So all these complaints can really be heard. And I'll get into that a lot when with my episode about the fans, because I have a lot to say about the fans and the players, and of course now with Arsene Wenger. But like I said, Arsenal Football Club is now it's to me it's called Arsenal Football Company, and the head of the snake. Many would say it's just Stan Kroenke and Ivan Gazidis, but they were handling more of the business side than the football side. Stan Kroenke is a type of owner. I don't like him. Never did. The second he came into the club, they announced that he was going to be majority owner. He already had a reputation in the United States of being a guy who just wants to make money. He doesn't really care about his teams. He's kind of more hands off. He just puts people in place to make the club or make the team profitable. And most of his teams are just mediocre. They're not good. Um, they barely get above 500, but they still make money somehow because they are in, um, great locations where people are very passionate about their sports. And he took advantage of this. Case in point, Stan Kroenke recently moved the St. Louis Rams to Los Angeles. Why? Because it's more money. The revenue that he can get from LA to St. In comparison to St. Louis is night and day. LA is basically the second biggest market in the country. You go New York, LA, and then it's Chicago as the third. And of course, I'm in Chicago, so I know all about it. I know how much money a sports team can generate throughout a year. And what different things that they can do to generate that money. And this is what Stan Kroenke does. He buys sports teams. He has several of them, and he wants to make money. And he moved to St. Louis and pretty much said "F you" to all the St. Louis fans. Said, "Nope, I'm leaving. I'm going to L.A. because I want to make more money." So when he took over the club, it was just I was like, "Oh, this is not going to be good. This is really not going to be good because, like I said, he already had a reputation in the United States, and like a United States owner coming over to England and trying to impose his American ideals as a businessman to a football club which has like a rich history. The English have their way of going about things. Americans have their way of going about things. Sometimes they're the same, but when it comes to sports teams, it's completely different. It really is. It's almost night and day. because the fans have more of a voice in England than they do in the United States. Sometimes things just do not get done with certain sports teams in the United States. I know that for a fact because I'm unfortunately a Detroit Lions fan, and they've been dog shit ever since I was basically born, you know. And, it's not a fun team to follow or to support because the owner, even the owner said it himself. He's part of the Ford family. Uh, he said himself that the Detroit Lions is just a play toy to him. That's what a lot of American owners really feel. A lot of American owners, though, in the same respect, they treat it like their play toy, and they spend and they spend and they spend because they want to raise a trophy above their head. Now, Stan Kroenke is the complete opposite. He just wants to make money. And so when that came about, it was just kind of like, oh my God. But the business side of Arsenal was already in place. The business model was already in place at Arsenal. Of course, that started in about 06, '07 once the Emirates opened up. I believe once David Dean left, it really changed the whole landscape of the club. It changed. It started to change the whole landscape of the Arsenal board. The Arsenal board was filled with football people who wanted to win things. You look back in the late '90s, early 2000s. They weren't afraid to spend money. They weren't afraid to try to bring in the best talent possible. You look at a lot of those teams from the late '90s all the way through '06. I mean, the Invincibles, you know, winning three league titles, winning FA Cups, being competitive in Champions League, making the Champions League final. That was the old Arsenal board. They would go to great lengths to try to raise money to, even though they were almost, they were almost bankrupt in the early 2000s, but they still were able to generate enough cash to start continuing on and bring in great players to the club to make the club great. And this all ended basically right after the Champions League final. That was like the peak of Arsenal Football Club, right there. With the Invincibles, and then and then 2 years later was the Champions League final. That was the peak. That was the golden era of Arsenal Football Club. But then again, everything changed because, on a business sense, it was smart. It was a great idea to pay off the Emirates, not to go through any type of third party um, loanees to pay for the Emirates, to pay off the Emirates quicker. But and then in the same respect have an even bigger debt. It was smart on a business side to get rid of all that bad debt, pay off the Emirates, and after the Emirates was paid off, like they said, they promised us once the Emirates is paid off, then we will start spending, then we will start bringing in more players, more great players, world class players, yada yada yada. But at the same time, this is when Arsene Wenger, at the same time, stopped being a football manager. When he became a businessman rather than a football manager. Because once David Dean left, David Dean resigned. Even Arsene Wenger asked him if he should resign with him. Of course, being the great man that David Dean is, he said, "No, you stay." Because no one's going to say, "Yeah, you should resign with me." No one's going to say that. No one's going to be that self centered or that selfish to say, "Yes, resign with me, walk out with me." Because that's exactly what Arsene Wenger wanted. He wanted full control. Yes, David Dean and Arsene Wenger worked well together, but at the same time, there was a number of times where they butted heads throughout their era during Arsenal. And sometimes it was good, sometimes it was bad, but at the same time, Arsene Wenger is such a control freak. He is so self centered at times that he wanted full control. He wanted full control over transfers, over how the money was spent, who was coming in, who was going out. He wanted it all, and he got it. Case in point, one example of a player that Arsene Wenger did not even want to come to Arsenal, and David Dean went over his head was Wiltor. And what did Wiltor do? He scored the game-winning goal at Old Trafford to win us the league in 2002, and I believe he assisted Robert Perez in the FA Cup final to win us the double. That's what great players are supposed to do. That's why you buy players like that. Um, to create that one or two magic moments that you'll never forget. Now, Wiltor, he had a good career at Arsenal. It wasn't great. It was just good. But those two moments, everybody will remember for as long as we live. Even beyond our time. Those moments, those two moments, will always be etched in history as great moments of Arsenal Football Club. And that's why you buy a player like that. But Arsene Wenger, he didn't want him. He didn't think we needed him. We don't need him. We don't need a guy like that. We already have great strikers. We don't need him. But what did David Dean say? He said, "Screw you, I'm buying him." So maybe there was a little "I told you so" after the fact. Maybe that pissed off Arsene Wenger a little bit. Maybe he thought, Arsene Wenger has this perception, not only of himself, but he just has this perception that he knows all, that he is such a genius when it comes to football that no one can tell him different. And that's one of the main problems of Arsene Wenger, is that his ego is just way too beyond this world. And it's gotten bigger and bigger as time has gone on because he's controlled everything. He didn't have to answer to anybody throughout this time. And he still doesn't. He has to answer to Ivan Gazidis, who's not really a football guy. He's more of a businessman and a financial guy rather than a football guy to understand transfers and to understand contracts of what to pay players each and every year. Um, so the accountability was never really there. No, he never really had to answer to anyone. Case in point as well, another example of how much control that Arsene Wenger wanted is during his time at Arsenal after that '06 season, after the '06 Champions League final, the likes of PSG, Real Madrid, the French national team, the list goes on of how many Bayern Munich even wanted him at one time. The list goes on of how many teams tried to come after Arsene Wenger to get him away from Arsenal, and he said no every time. Why? Because he wouldn't have full control over those teams. Because there was always a sporting, even look at Fergie, as great as he was during his time at Manchester United, he still had help. He still had a sporting director there. Yes, he had a lot of control at Manchester United, a ton of it, but not to the point to where he still needed help to for someone to do the contracts, to go after players, to bring players in, to scout players. He couldn't do all that to where Arsene Wenger wants to do all that. I mean, at one point in time, Arsene Wenger was in control of not only the first team, but he was in control of the academy as well. That's too much for one person. That's too much control for one person. But, Arsenal's board, they allowed it. They had allowed it to happen to a point now that it's difficult to even try to even get rid of a guy like that. But like I said, going back to about 2007, this is when he became a businessman instead of a football manager. He was in, he had his hand in the cookie jar at every single point in time after David Dean left. And this is kind of really his downfall. A lot of people are going to make the excuse, which is a good excuse. We didn't have much of a transfer budget. He had to sell off a lot of his players. One naming, Thierry Henry, when he left, he was completely honest and said, the ambition of the club has changed. He left basically right after um, David Dean did, and I think Terry saw that and said, "Holy shit, he's leaving. Who's going to be controlling all this?" And of course, he saw Arsene Wenger is going to be in control of all this, and Arsene almost had it already set in his mind that the Invincibles were getting older. Some were retiring, some were moving on, and it was time for a youth movement. With the poster boys going to be RVP and then of course Cesc Fabregas. Two great players to make your poster boys, but at the same time, they weren't going to bring anybody else in. The old motto goes at Arsenal, especially with Arsene Wenger, was we don't bring in world class players, we make world class players. It's really naive. That's really putting too much faith in players that every club has it. Every club has players that don't pan out. They buy them for a certain amount. Maybe they buy them on the cheap. Maybe they're considered an up and coming player. And it just wasn't there. There wasn't enough of them this time around. You look at some of the players that were brought in even before Arsene took over and before David Dean really took over the, uh, you know, quote unquote, the sporting directing job at uh, Arsenal Football Club. Patrick Vieira was a great player, but he was in a wrong position. He was in a wrong team, wrong league. He came from Serie A. Same with Dennis Bergkamp. They were both great players, both probably world class even at that time, but they were in the wrong situation. They come to the right situation at Arsenal to where they have a lot more freedom. They can play the way they want to, and all of a sudden they just take off and they become the players that we all know and love today. Same with Thierry Henry, Robert Perez, Freddie Ljungberg. Name any of those. There's very few players that came through Arsenal Football Club during that era that were already established, that were already kind of, oh, he's already a great player. And I mean, one being like Sol Campbell. That's one guy who was already established, especially in the Premier League. Obviously he came from the scum, and he was already established. But we kind of helped along, sped up the process, like I guess if you will, and gave them the football freedom to really express themselves and play the way they wanted to. And that was the whole mantra of Arsene Wenger's philosophy, that we make world class players. Well, a lot of those players were already fucking pretty damn good. I mean, look, Thierry Henry was already, he was a bench player. Same with Robert Perez. They were bench players on that 1998 World Cup team. Patrick Vieira was starting. Uh, I'm not going to go all into that, but you catch my drift. But again, during this time, he had to be more of a businessman than a football manager because he had to shuffle around the money. He had to start selling off players to gain extra money to bring other players in. And during this process, he forgot how to be a football manager. He forgot, through all the transfers, through all the contracts, through all the scouting, through all the youth academy stuff that he was doing, he totally forgot how to be a football manager. I mean, you could see it today. You could see it in the last 4 years easily. I've never seen another manager, unless he's injured, unless he's, paralyzed from the neck down, sit on the fucking bench as much as he does. He sits on the bench for 80 minutes out of the 90 minutes of a game. Never seen, never see another manager do that ever. He did a interview uh, last last season where he said, "I'm not a screamer anymore. I'm not as ruthless as I used to be. I don't yell at players like I used to. Why not? Because a lot of these players, even today, even last season, the season before that, the season even before that, needed a swift kick in the ass. They needed to be held accountable. They needed to be yelled at. They needed their manager to be on the touchline screaming at them while they're drowning. And that's what Arsene Wenger does now. He just sits his ass on his chair and talks to Steve Bold the entire fucking game. Never seen any other manager do that ever. But of course, that guy, he's sitting there making $8 million, 8 million pounds, 8 million and a half pounds a year for just sitting there and doing nothing. And it just really frustrates the shit out of me. And like I said, he's not a football manager anymore. He's more of I don't know. I don't know how to make an example of this, but maybe he's like the sideshow clown at a birthday party. He's just a sideshow, right? Oh, there's Arsene Wenger. Look at him. I've seen it in the flesh. I went to the Champions League game against Monaco last season, and I just remember I was sitting kind of diagonally from him across the field, and every so often I would look over, just sitting there, sitting there, sitting there, sitting there, while the team was just drowning, didn't know what to do, didn't know how to defend, didn't know how to attack, nothing. Didn't know how to break down Monaco for the life of him. But what was he doing? Sitting there on the fucking bench, doing nothing. Talking to Steve Bold so he can make some type of, halftime speech that's gonna motivate anybody. Someone made a comparison. This is a couple of years ago, a conspiracy theory about Arsene Wenger, why he doesn't go on the touchline anymore, and why he doesn't try to shout out any type of commands to the team. Because unlike the players, he can see everything. He can see everything that's going on. But the conspiracy theory was Arsene Wenger is terrified to say anything on the touchline because the other manager might counter him. Now, if he was such a great fucking football manager, it shouldn't matter what the other manager was going to do to counter his actions. Because you just don't see it anymore. You don't see Arsene Wenger on the touchline anymore. You see him for maybe the first like 2 or 3 minutes of the game, then he goes sits down. Then he might get up if we score a goal, and then he goes sits back down. Then he puts on his fucking coat that he can't zip up, no matter who makes it. You can put buttons on those fucking things, and he'll still fuck it up. And that's it. That's like I said, he's a sideshow act now, and people are still, for whatever reason, eating it up. He's been the main voice throughout all this time, talking about the money, paying off the Emirates, transfers, when we're going to spend, when we're not going to spend, who's available, who's not available, stuff like that. Not any of the Arsenal board. I mean, a couple Arsenal board members have come out over the recent years. Lord Harris last year said, like right in an interview, said Arsene Wenger has £100 million to spend, and I hope he spends it. That's one of the Arsenal board members, and what's he do? He spends 10 million of it, and that was it. Didn't do anything else with it. Throughout this process, it's just one frustration at a time. Take Cesc Fabregas and when RVP left. You know, it seemed like the timeline moved up a year almost every single year. I remember back like in 2010, it says, well, one more year, and we're going to start spending some money. But then that 1 year came, and we didn't spend any money. And what happened? Says Fabregas leaves, Nasri leaves, Gail Clichy leaves, all gets money for it. The funniest one out of all those three is Samri Nasri. Why he gets flack from and why he gets slated by Arsenal fans is beyond me, because he didn't want to leave. He wanted to stay. Even after Cesc Fabregas left and he forced his way out. He wanted to stay. He didn't want to go to Man City. But Arsene Wenger wanted the money instead and shuffled him out the door. Now, maybe Nasri had, obviously he has some issues. He was obviously like a difficult player to deal with, especially on the national team. He will never see the national team ever again, as far as the French national team, because of what happened at the World Cup in 2010. And that's a shame. Obviously, that's his fault. No one else can say otherwise. But at the same time, he wanted to stay at Arsenal. He didn't want to leave. He wanted to stay. But Arsene Wenger wanted the money. He shuffled him out the door. That's all he was thinking about: the money, the money, the money, the money, paying off the Emirates. I think Cesc Fabregas wanted to stay, but I think Cesc Fabregas wanted to see Arsene Wenger actually start spending some money and bringing in some world class talent. Because we still needed, even at that time, we needed a center half, we needed a winner, um, potentially another midfielder, but Jack Wilshere was coming up during that time. That's when Jack had his like his breakout year, that 2010 2011 year. Um, but that's what we really needed. We had RVP up front. We had Nasri on the left or the right. Sometimes he switched over left or right. Sometimes he played in the midfield once in a while. But we needed another world class winner. We needed another goal scorer on the pitch. But Arsene Wenger didn't want to go out and spend any money. But what does he do? He shuffles all those players out the door for the money. RVP, same damn thing. He waited and he waited and he waited and he waited to the point that he just got so frustrated, handed in his transfer papers, and said, "See you later." He tried to bring in, obviously he brought in Santi Cazorla, but Santi Cazorla, while he is a great player, I think he became world class when he was here at Arsenal. But at the same time, it's not Cesc Fabregas. When you try to compare the two players, I think Cesc is still better, obviously. Better passer of the ball, better, Santi's probably better at dribbling, obviously, dribbling past people. But as far as passing, vision, awareness, I mean, Cesc was one of the best in the world at the number 10 position at that time. So it wasn't exactly Cesc Fabregas material again. But that's all he basically brought in. He didn't try to bring in another world class player. He didn't try to bring in a world class winner, potentially another, possibly a world class CM. No, nothing was happening in the defense. And again, just like Thierry Henry said, the ambition of the club is just not there. Rather saying the ambition of the club, Thierry Henry and even RVP, maybe Thierry Henry didn't realize it at the time, but really they're talking about Arsene Wenger. Arsene Wenger just didn't have any more. He was so dead set on making money rather than spending it. And of course, we lost one of our, best strikers that we've ever had, and he moved on to Manchester United, won the league, and he's drowning away in Turkey now. So, I mean, I still hate him. Okay, let's just get that clear. I still have some small hatred for RVP, small hatred for Cesc Fabregas, and even Thierry Henry. Because when Arsenal needed them the most, they left. When the fans needed them the most, they took off. And since then, you can say this about Cesc and even RVP. They will never ever find another fan base that will love them more than we did. And I think they realize that. I think definitely Cesc really realizes that, especially through his time at Barcelona. He thought he was going to go there and be the man, and overtake Xavi for his role, maybe even Iniesta. And he came in and he found out he got a reality check real fast. And that's why I think in that the summer of Ozil, that he was supposed to come back. That Ozil just fell onto our lap, and that's just a whole nother conspiracy theory I have that I won't get into. But again, it's all about the money with Arsene Wenger. I really truly honestly believe that every single penny that's sitting in that bank account right now, just collecting dust, collecting interest, he thinks it's his, not anyone else's. He thinks that's his war chest. He thinks that's his money. And honestly, if you've met some old people throughout your lifetime, they are hoarders of money for whatever reason. And it's really shocking. You know, Currently, right now, we have the second most cash reserves of any big club in the world. Manchester United was first with something like 238 million pounds in cash reserves currently. Arsenal was number 2 at 200 million pounds. Third was Bayern Munich with something like 78 million pounds or euros. I don't know what they chose to if it's in euros or pounds. I didn't check. Fourth was Barcelona, and fifth was Real Madrid. Now Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, three of the biggest clubs in the world, three of the clubs that you always say when Champions Leagues comes around, they are the favorites. Why? Because they spend their money wisely, because they get all the best players, and they're not afraid to spend the money. That's the thing about those three clubs. Even Manchester United, they're not afraid to spend the money. That's obvious. Over the last 2 or 3 seasons, I mean, they've just spent a boatload of money trying to bring in players to beef up their squad to make themselves relevant again after Fergie left. And they're still not. This coming summer, they're going to spend a lot more money too, most likely. They'll probably have to reach, Champions League level, which I don't think they will. I just don't think they have enough there to do it. So they might be in Europa League again, but if they win Europa League this year, then they will automatically. Well, I think they'll. I don't know if they automatically get into the Champions League group stage, or if they have to or if they have to play in a playoff. Um, Not too sure on the rules on that, but you know they might make it just on default if they win Europa League. Which obviously Europa League, not too many teams, especially big clubs, really take it seriously. You saw the year before, last year Juventus was in it, and they ended up losing. They went to the Champions League final the following year. Um, Spurs are in it every single fucking year, and they get bounced every single fucking year. Chelsea took it seriously that one year, and of course, they already had their Champions League spot secure, but they won it, and that was before they get that. But that was like one of the last big clubs that actually took um, Europa League seriously. Um, so it is a concern that we're not going out there and spending the money like a Bayern Munich or a Real Madrid. This is how these teams stay relevant. These are why these teams win Champions League. This is why these teams make it to the semifinals, make it to the finals almost every single year. Because they're not afraid to spend the money because they know they're going to keep on generating so much money that they're not worried about it. If you look at the commercial deals compared from Bayern Munich to Arsenal, it's like night and day. Arsenal is getting better at it, but at the same time, they're just so far and away so much richer than us. Again, they're not afraid to spend the money because that's how they know they're going to stay relevant. But Arsenal Football Club, we like to call ourselves a big club. We are in terms of money, but as far as trophies go, we're lacking the one trophy that makes us a big club, and that's the Champions League trophy. And we just do not have it. Arsene Wenger has been trying to chase that trophy ever since he came to Arsenal. We've had a couple good runs even after that Champions League final. We made the semifinal. But then after that, it was just kind of like downhill. You know, with Cesc leaving, with RVP leaving, our real nucleus that was supposed to take us into the next era after the Invincibles left. And we still haven't, we've replaced Cesc Fabregas, but we have yet to replace RVP, and it's been 3 seasons now that we have yet to replace him. People are even going way back in time and say we haven't even replaced Gilberto Silva. We haven't even replaced Patrick Vieira. That's been a long time now since those players have left the club, and we still haven't replaced them. And that's a concern. That comes back to the money. That comes back to not spending the money. Again, 200 million pounds in the bank currently collecting interest. They all the financial geeks are saying by the time the summer ends or by the time the season ends, Arsenal Football Club will have anywhere from 240 to 260 million pounds in cash reserves to spend. And a lot of the financial geeks also say we could spend 125 million pounds and it wouldn't even make a dent. But will Arsene Wenger do that? There is no proof that he will. Yes, he went out and bought Ozil, who fell onto our lap, in my opinion. But again, that was the only player he bought through that entire summer. And according to all the papers, all the media outlets, we had an excess of 70 million pounds to spend that summer. But we only bought one single player when we needed more players to come in to strengthen the depth of our squad because we just didn't have it. And that's what ended up losing us the league that season, the 13 and 14 season. It was due to players getting tired because they were run into the ground and players getting injured. That's what lost us the league. He even went through January and didn't buy a single fucking player. We got Kim Kellstrom on loan, who was also injured before he even got to the club finally. If he would have just bought a couple more players during the summer, bought maybe a couple players in the wintertime, we might have already won the league in that 13 and 14 season. It was there for the taking. You know, Man City was up and down, up and down. Liverpool was, hanging in there, up and down, up and down. Chelsea was just praying for a top four finish. It was there for the taking. We were on top of the table for 128 straight days, or a total of 128 days. We were at the top of the table, and it just came crashing down. That February and early March just murdered us. We had a tough schedule, obviously, but at the same time, that's when everybody started to get injured and everybody started to get tired. That was losing to Liverpool 5-1, losing to Chelsea 6-0. It was just a disaster. Losing to Stoke 1-0 at their place. I mean, that was the game. I still remember that game of the players just not even interested, not even caring. And it was just, it was a complete shit show. But if we strengthened the right way, if we picked up a couple more players that you can rotate the squad in between Champions League, FA Cup, and the league, chances are we probably could have won that league that year. But we didn't because the man didn't want to spend any money. The following year, we finally do spend some money. We finally do bring in a lot of players. Lexi Sanchez, Matthew DeBrucci, Callum Chambers, David Ospina, Danny Welbeck, all brought in. Finally started to spend some money. But then again, injuries killed us for a second straight year. But last season, okay, in the 13-14 season, we lost the league in early March. That's when we lost the league. That's pretty late in the season to when you finally kind of concede and say, yep, we lost the league finally. Last year, it was in the first month and a half of the season. Chelsea got off to a great start. They were scoring goals for fun. Diego Costa, Cesc Fabregas, they were just going nuts. But in the beginning of the season, we square peg, round hole. We weren't playing in our 4-2-3-1 formation. We tried to play a 4-1-4-1 formation, trying to fit Aaron Ramsey and Jack Wilshere on the pitch at the same time. Olivier Giroud was hurt, after the Everton game. Or during the Everton game, he had a hairline fracture, obviously, in his leg. Which brought on Danny Welbeck, which was the kind of like the panic buy of Danny Welbeck a little bit, which I'm glad we have him. I think, I'd rather see him up top, but I'll get that part in the players. But running that formation, running the tactics that he did in the beginning of the season just killed it. We couldn't score any goals. No one knew what they were doing. No one knew their role. When Jack and Ramsey were on the pitch, they didn't know who was going forward, who was staying back, who was going to protect the midfield with fucking Arteta or Flamini, which is another joke within itself. No one knew what the role was. Ozil was playing on the fucking left side, the right side, not playing him at the number 10. I mean, it was just a fucking nightmare, a tactical nightmare in the first month and a half, 2 months of the season, and we lost the league right then and there. Chelsea just came out of the block storming, and we couldn't catch up, no matter what we did, no matter what we tried. It wasn't until the second half of the season when we finally put Ozil back at the number 10 that we started rolling again. Everybody was healthy, everybody was ready to go. And coming into this year, when you look at the second half of last year, you're thinking, this is our year. This is going to be our year. We have Czech coming in. We're hoping that we buy maybe another player or two. Maybe we can fall into somebody else. Maybe we'll coax a world class winner or a world class defenseman away from their club and bring them to Arsenal to strengthen even more. But nope, nope. Honestly, if Czech didn't fall into our lap, which he did, it was his choice. He gave an ultimatum to Chelsea saying, "My family's here, my kids are in school here. I do not want to move." PSG offered him more money than we did. He said no to PSG. He wanted to stay in London. The only club that he wanted to go to was Arsenal. He forced Chelsea's hand. Roman gave him his wish, and he fell into our lap. Think about one thing. If he didn't fall into our lap, who would we would have bought last summer? No one. It would have been another summer of not buying anyone, another summer of not spending any money. We only spent £10 million last summer. That was it. It's a fucking joke of what this guy goes through, his transfer policy, how much he thinks players are worth. This is the modern game. You know, he, we don't like to thank Arsene Wenger for bringing Arsenal into the modern game, but then the modern game passed him by. He's still thinking in, in terms of, well, Thierry Henry only cost me like, £12 million or £15 million, however much he was back then. That was still a premium price back then. That was before TV contracts went through the kazoo. I mean, look at the TV contracts that are going to be up and running next season. I mean, every single club in the Premier League, if you're in the Premier League, is just going to have so much money they're not going to know what to do with it. And that's another thing. We're going to have so much money come rolling in. It shouldn't matter if we go out and spend 50, 60, 70 million pounds on a single player. The last 3 summers were the summers to really just go out there and strengthen the side so that we don't have to worry about it anymore. Because now with the financial fair play crap kind of dead and gone, Man City is just going to go ham. Chelsea is going to go ham again. Even though they might not have Champions League, but they're going to try to go ham again. Manchester United, same damn thing. They're definitely not going to be afraid to spend any money now. But of course, Arsenal didn't want to strengthen. They didn't want to bring in more than one world-class player for whatever fucking reason I do not get. Look at the Luis Suarez deal. We offered 40 million and £1. That triggered his release clause. He was supposed to be ours. How Liverpool got away with that, how the FA let Liverpool get away with that, how the BPL let Liverpool get away with that is beyond me. How they did not get fined, how they did not get any type of restrictions put on them is beyond me. Because they went against a player contract, which you're not supposed to do. But as reports came out even after the fact that all that Arsenal needed to do was put 10 million more pounds on the deal and Luis Suarez would have been ours. 10 million to a club like Arsenal that's worth, according to Forbes magazine or the website, Arsenal is currently worth 1.3 to 1.4 billion dollars. And 10 million pounds is nothing to them. That's maybe 2 or 3 games worth of ticket revenue during a season. 10 million pounds is maybe 2 or 3 Champions League games. That's it. But He didn't want to give the extra 10 million pounds. He thought that he had Liverpool by the short ones. He thought, well, he's going to be ours anyway because we triggered his release clause. But he wasn't betting on Liverpool just giving him the middle finger and says, fuck you, we're not going to let him go. And of course, that's what happened. He didn't want to pay the extra 10 million, and we lost out on a world class striker. This is his mentality. Like I said, he thinks that money is his. And if you go throughout time, you look at what he does, his tactics. I started losing my faith last season during the Man City game, right before the Man City game. I was thinking about the 13 and 14 season when we went up to the Etihad and we just got murdered. Man City just kind of sat back, let us attack, and they killed us on the counter. And they just murdered us the entire fucking game. And that's all I was thinking about. I was like, man, we're going to get fucking killed. Because we were still dealing with some injuries. I don't think Ozil was back just yet. Coughlin was just coming into the fold. Um, we weren't scoring a whole lot of goals still. You just thought it's going to be a bloodbath. And of course, the Man City game happens. We kicked the shit out of them for 90 minutes. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't put more than 2 or 3 passes together. They couldn't get any scoring chances. And you're thinking, holy shit, we have a plan B. Holy shit, Arsene Wenger finally has a plan B. He's finally becoming a tactical genius again. But then 2 days later, we find out in an article that the players actually came to Arsene Wenger and says, this is the way we want to play this game. It wasn't Arsene Wenger's tactics. It wasn't his game plan. It was the players. How many times do you hear that in a football season from a top club or a club that considers themselves a big club? Not often. Never. I've never heard that before, where players would actually come to a manager and say, this is the way we want to play. And once I read that article, once I read those quotes from Santi Cazorla, I said, I'm done. That was when my water started to really boil. Because he still doesn't have a plan B or a plan C or anything. He just has a plan A, attack. That's it. We're quote unquote good enough to beat every single team in the world by our playing style. No, we're not, because we just don't have the players to play that style. We're not the Invincibles. Thierry Henry's not the striker. Dennis Bergkamp's not the number 10. You don't have Robert Perez and Freddie Ljungberg on the wings. You don't have Patrick Vieira and Gilberto Silva manning the midfield. You don't have a Sol Campbell or a Tony Adams or a Martin Keown or a Lee Dixon or Nigel Windelbaum. You don't have any of those players. We only have Ozil, Sanchez, Cech, and maybe Koscielny. Those are the only 4 players. And honestly, out of those 4 players, I think maybe Ozil would only make the team. Maybe the bench. We don't have those players anymore. But Arsene Wenger, he likes to convince all of us that we do. We just don't. And why is that? Because he doesn't want to go out and spend any money. Because he doesn't want to bring those type of players in. Because a lot of those players, while they wanted to run through a brick wall for Arsene Wenger, at the same time, they had their own personalities. They had their own egos. Those guys wanted to win. They wanted to win not only for themselves, but for each other and the manager and the club. And that's what they did. These players today, they're thinking more about money, endorsements, contracts. Um, there's very few people on Arsenal, as far as players go, that just has that winning mentality. And where does that stem from? From the actual club leader, the manager. I think just like back in between the time that we were paying off the Emirates, all the Arsenal board wanted was to stay competitive, stay in the top 4 so we can get that extra money in Champions League. And we were content with that. We were sold a dream by Arsene Wenger that has never been realized yet. it's like talking. It's like listening to a used car salesman. And I think he's content with it too. I think he's so used to the day to day, the daily grind, not spending money, just staying in top four, being content with that. Who knows? That might be Stan Kroenke's business plan. Just stay in top four, you'll be fine. Maybe that's his business model too. And if that's the extent of it, the motherfucker needs to go. But of course, he probably will not get fired ever. He's going to leave whenever he feels like it. And honestly, after this contract runs out, I don't think he's going to leave. I think he's probably going to sign another 2 or 3 year contract. I can see it. Because look at the names that we've passed on over the years. We've missed out on Pep Guardiola twice now in the last 3 years. He's going to be at Man City next year, and that's not going to be fun. Carlo Ancelotti, he's going to Bayern Munich. Jose Mourinho is said to be lined up for the Manchester United job next year. We're going to be up Shit's Creek, and we're already behind the 8 ball already as far as trying to pick up world class players and trying to strengthen the squad. Because, like I said, the last 3 seasons, the last 3 summers is when we were supposed to buy the most. To the point that we could have strengthened the squad to the point to where after this season it didn't matter what Chelsea is going to do or what Man City is going to do or what Manchester United is going to do or what Liverpool is going to do. That's another one. Klopp's at Liverpool now. It's going to start getting tougher and tougher every single year that he stays on. And who knows who the heir apparent is? Who knows who's going to take over after him? There is a supporters meeting or a supporter group uh, thing last year. Um, Stan Kroenke wasn't there. I think Ivan Gazidis, I think another board member was there. I think John Cross was one of the uh, main speakers in there. And one thing that came out of it was saying that Pep Guardiola would be the dream to take over after Arsene Wenger is done. He had the opportunity. He had the opportunity this year. The rumors were out there. The news articles were out there that Pep Guardiola was going to leave after this year at Bayern. There's even a rumor out there that said he wanted the Arsenal job, but Arsene Wenger did not want to step aside. That is the true definition of being selfish. When there is another manager who is better than you, who is younger than you, who can take this club to the next level that he couldn't. Because Pep Guardiola, he's a winner. He's won Champions League. He's won La Liga. Now he's won Bundesliga. And now he's going to come to the EPL and he's going to win that fucking thing too. You better fucking believe it. And he's going to have all the money in the world that he wants to spend. And given his reputation as a great manager, players will want to come there to play for him. But with Arsene Wenger, he's getting older. Players know that he only has maybe 2, 3 years left in him. But he seems like he's the type that he's just not going to give it up. Why? He's not a football manager anymore. He sits on the bench. I really love to be a fly on the wall or being a fly in the grass and really watch what they do during their training sessions. Because I'm going to get to this when I talk about the players too, of what they actually do during their training sessions, because there's so many players that have come through Arsenal over the last 5 or 6 years that have been with the team that have not progressed, that have not gotten better. That old motto of "we make world-class players." It's no. It's when's the last time we've made a world-class player? There's not. Maybe Lauren Koscielny. That's it. That's it. maybe there'll be some high hopes for Hector Bellerin. I think in a couple years' time, given given time, give him the proper coaching, that he'll probably be one of the top three right backs in the world in a couple years' time. But he still needs that time. I know a lot of people have been kind of complaining about his play over the last few weeks, but at the same time, he's still young, dude. He's still learning. He has no backup on top of that. But again, that's another thing with Arsene Wenger. He doesn't hold his players accountable for anything. Under Arsene Wenger, you could have bad game after bad game after bad game after bad game and still start. Aaron Ramsey is case in point. He's had so many bad games this year that I can't even count. But he still plays them. Per Mertesacker, same damn thing. Still plays them. He kind of has to play them because everybody's fucking hurt. But then there's a guy like Joel Campbell who works his ass off, plays his fucking ass off, plays well, and can't get any fucking time because he'd rather start the Ox, who is a dog shit player. Who is one person in my next part of this I'm going to fucking go in hard on because I'm sick of seeing him playing and I'm sick of seeing him wearing an Arsenal shirt. I really am. Another guy, Theo Walcott, that's another fucking player. He can be lazy as he fucking wants to. He can act like he's CR7 and just like kind of trot around the fucking pitch and do absolutely nothing, but still gets fucking game time. Doesn't make any sense. I think he is a guy who is just content, and that's it. Winning a couple FA Cups, yeah, that's nice. It's great. First time we won anything in 9 years, a couple years ago. One back to back, great again. But at least one of those years we should have won the league too. This year, definitely. Look who's on top of us. Fucking Leicester and fucking Spurs. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to take anything away from Leicester. They've played their game. They've played their tactics. They've done what they're supposed to do. And it worked. They've had all the luck in the fucking world this season. To where, if you're an Arsenal fan, it's just nothing but bad luck. Yeah, we've had some luck on our side here and there. Of course, obviously, with the FA Cups. But we want to win the big trophies. We want to win the Premier League. We want to be competitive and win Champions League. That's the one thing I care about the most. I want to win Champions League. I don't give a fuck about the league. I don't give a fuck about FA Cups. I want to win Champions League because I'm sick of Arsenal sitting at the kids' table. Because that's what we're doing. We're still sitting at the kids' table. We're not sitting at the big table. We can't brag about having a Champions League trophy. We can't because we don't have it. And one of the main problems in that scenario of why we don't have it is Arsene Wenger. And I never thought I would say this. I was ready to say it last season, especially in the beginning of the season, playing players out of position, running that shitty ass formation. But I want them out. Like that banner said at the Hull City game, thanks for the memories, but it's time to say goodbye because he is so far past it. And like I said, he is a sideshow act, and people are just in love with it for some fucking reason. You know what? He did a lot of great things here, and I'm thankful that he was our manager for a great amount of time. But there's a time and place to where you need to end. All great things come to an end. It's just like the quote. Someone made a quote on Reddit a couple weeks ago, which is perfect. From The Dark Knight. You live long enough, you'll become the villain. And that's what's happened. Because if he cared enough, he would be on the touchline. If he cared enough, he wouldn't let that team drown game after game after game. That's what he's done. Obviously halftime speeches don't do it anymore. His press conferences make me want to throw my head against the wall and send it through the fucking wall of some of the shit that he says, especially lately too. Well, I don't care what the fans say or think about or what they think they know. You know, we're not stupid. We see what's going on. Maybe some of the casual fans are stupid. They don't watch enough. They don't watch enough football. Every day or every weekend. They don't study the game. They don't study formations, positioning, runs, passing. They don't study the statistics. The statistics. All they're doing is just watching the game, and that's it. They foul the ball. Instead of watching off the ball of what other players are doing. But some of us, we study the game. We watch the game. We watch more than just where the ball is going. We care more about even when the ball goes into the net. We care about passing to statistics. We care if a player is playing out of position or playing, where he takes himself out of position. If he doesn't make a run, if he doesn't sell out, we can see a player like a Theo Walcott against Man United who's just dogging it the entire fucking time. We can see these things. And he's sitting right there seeing it in the flesh. But of course, we're fucking idiots, of course, because he thinks he's all knowing. And it's so annoying, it's so frustrating, and it's sad that it has come to this. It really has. Because honestly, he probably should have retired after the FA Cup in 2014. He probably should have said, "Thanks for everything. I'm gonna go upstairs. I'm gonna take an executive job. I'm gonna be the quote unquote the new David Dean, and I'm gonna help the new manager come through the club and work with him and get the players that we need to propel Arsenal Football Club into the future." But no, he stayed on. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse because I think if we don't win the league this season, there's a good possibility where Ozil just walks away, and that'll be a fucking nightmare. And if that does happen, good luck to Arsene Wenger, because I don't think there will be a single fan who will not want him out of the club. I think this year more than any year, there's been some spells where Arsenal has been bad and they've lost a few games and they're just calling for Arsene's head. I've always kind of stepped back and let people do their thing. But now more than any time, I'm just fed up with everything. Fed up with all the lies, all the deceit. Anytime he does a fucking press conference and he's asked about players and transfers, I mean, it just makes me want to vomit because I'm just sick of everything. Sick of all the crap. And I don't want to deal with it anymore. We need someone new with fresh ideas who actually knows anything about tactics because we don't have any. We only have one tactic, one touch football, pass the ball around. Hopefully, we'll score a goal. We have no defensive tactics. We have no uh, we have no accountability in the club. We have no confidence. Um, we have no players who just know their role and stick to that role and don't try to be some type of superhero. And it all stems right from the top. Arsene Wenger. So tell me what you think. You have any comments on it. Like I said, this is my opinion, whether you like it or not. If you disagree with it, put something with some type of knowledge and logic behind it instead of just calling me a fucking idiot or calling me I'm not an Arsenal fan because no one should go against the manager or no one should go against the players or what the club is trying to do. That's all bullshit. That's just a casual fan talking, in my opinion. That's just a yes man. That's what Arsene Wenger has become, a yes man. A businessman. That's what a businessman does. That's what a salesman does. Yes, 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 sir. like I said, we got sold a dream that didn't come true, and we're still all bending over and taking it. We're stuck in mediocrity. We're stuck in football hell. What is football hell? Football hell is a terminology that we use here in the United States. Is that we are good enough to stay competitive, but we will never, ever win the big trophies. You can say that in baseball, basketball. Baseball, you're good enough, or baseball, basketball, even NFL. You're good enough to make the playoffs, but you'll never make it to the Super Bowl, and you'll never win the Super Bowl. You'll never win the World Series. You'll never win the NBA championship. Same thing with Arsenal. That's where we're in right now. That's where we're stuck in football hell. We're good enough to finish top four, but we're not good enough to win the league. We're not good enough to win Champions League. We found out in the group stage against Bayern Munich when we went to their place how far off we were. They murdered us that game. Barcelona came to our place recently. Yeah, we fell apart. After the 70th minute, we just fell apart because we just didn't have enough difference makers on the pitch. And who's to blame for that? Arsene Wenger. He's the one who brings in players, who shuffles out players, who buys the players, who sets up players' contracts. I mean, that's another thing about him. The list goes on and on. You know, you okay. Beginning of the season, we heard about Mesut Ozil and Alexis Sanchez potentially signing new contracts, and we kept hearing it. I kept hearing it, and hearing it, and hearing it, all the way up to about December, and then all of a sudden, it just stopped. There was nothing written about it anymore, nothing to be said about it anymore. Arsene Wenger, in a recent press conference, was asked, "Is Mesut Ozil or Alexis Sanchez close to signing a new contract?" His answer was no. That was it. That was the extent of the answer. No. That's scary. But if you get injured at Arsenal, Jack Wilshere, Aaron Ramsey, Theo Walcott, um, the list, Oxlade Chamberlain, if you're injured at Arsenal, you will get not only a new contract, but you'll get a pay raise on top of that. How the fuck does that happen? So if Ozil or Alexis Sanchez were smart, they would get injured like right now, so they can get a new contract, so they can get the money that they deserve. And each one of them should be on about £200,000 a week. And I'll get into this more about the players and Arsene, in my next, because this is going on and on. I don't want to keep on going on and on and on. But Ozil is just having a magical season. 18 assists already in the season. Imagine if we went out and bought a world class winger, world class striker, either last summer or the summer before that. He would have already shattered Thierry Henry's record by now. And there's a stat in my next part I'm gonna bring up, which is gonna like drop your fucking jaw. And it's one of the problems that we've been having this year. And it's one of the main problems of why we won't be competitive is because we do not have enough difference makers on the pitch. And again, that starts with Arsene Wenger. But like I said, I'm not going to keep on going on like this. I'll probably plug in some other things throughout these next two episodes. But tell me what you think. Comment on it if you like. Um, you know, but that'll be it later.